there. But then we'll be taking another look at Erin as it continues to move off of the coast and move further into the Atlantic Ocean, and then looking ahead to a big cool down that could be on the way for next week. We got a nice trough moving in, dropping temperatures, bringing precipitation to areas that haven't seen it in a little bit. So we'll be talking about all that here in a little bit. But before that, reviewing yesterday's storms, had some gusty storms in the southeast of the country. Nothing really too severe, nothing too high end in those areas, but just some breezy storms out in the southeast. Can see Erin kind of swirling off the coast, continuing there. For right now, not really much going on, but later on this afternoon and evening, there's a good chance for storms kind of near the Fargo, Aberdeen area. They could see some hail, wind, tornadoes, main three hazards for that area today, and then got a little bit of a risk down by Phoenix. That's really only for wind down there. Got monsoon season type storms out in that area. And then for tomorrow, a similar risk area and shape there for Minneapolis, Omaha, Rapid City, Denver included in that risk. Another small risk out in the desert southwest for those monsoon windy type storms out there. And then going into the weekend, there's not really much to talk about. Things kind of slow down as we go into the weekend and should pick up again as we get into next week with a few more severe potentials. Right now we have a nice little cold front that those storms are going to be firing off of today in the northern Midwest there, a stationary front triggering those daytime storms in the southeast part of the country. And then we have Erin swirling off the coast there. Right now it's a Category 2 hurricane, eventually going to be downgraded to Category 1 as we go through the rest of the day today, tomorrow, and then into the weekend. So we'll zoom in on a couple areas. There's Erin. Looks a little bit more sheared apart on satellite. Got a fairly large spread. I did a brief measurement yesterday on just the aerial coverage of the storm, and from north to south it spans about 600 to 700 miles, so a very, very large storm system. Luckily not very strong, and luckily not directly impacting any parts of the U.S., but we do have some tropical storm warnings still in effect for parts of the East Coast. And then in the southeast and in Texas, we do still have a few little pop-up storms that are going on, but nothing really high-end, severe or anything like that. Temperatures right now a little bit cooler up north in the Northeast and Great Lakes region. Temperatures warming up again for the central and southern plains. And then of course you got the desert southwest heat kicking in too. Expecting just a few more days of this heat before things really start to cool down for the central portion of the country. Here's our significant hail model here. Things don't really start to become favorable for hail, wind, and tornadoes until later on this evening. Around 5 p.m. things might start to pick up, but this looks like it's going to be an overnight type of event going into the midnight and then very early morning hours, and then before kind of shutting off in that part of the Midwest before moving a little bit farther off west into tomorrow morning. So zooming in a little bit more here, you see Fargo, Aberdeen, kind of the main areas at risk for today before shifting a little bit farther south and to the west for that risk tomorrow. For hail size today, we're expecting up to golf ball sized hail. Maybe we'll get an isolated 2-inch hail report out of those storms, likely going to be farther in northern Minnesota, where we see some of those larger hailstones, where those conditions are just a little bit more favorable for those more isolated storms. As we get a little bit more linear, then it becomes more of a wind and tornado threat. with those storms. So here's our hail map. You can see as we zoom in here, if the clicker will work there, Fargo, Sioux Falls, Sheridan, Wyoming, in the main portions of the risk area for today, with Fargo being the largest city that is really at any sort of considerable risk for the day. Sioux Falls is just on the outer edge, same with Sheridan. Rapid City, not quite in that risk either, but Fargo is going to be the main city to watch. Got them at a moderate risk level for today, for up to golf ball sized hail. So we'll be watching that very closely as we go into the evening and overnight hours. For the wind, fairly similar story. Fargo, Sioux Falls, Sheridan, and then got that little risk down in Phoenix, expecting up to maybe 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts with some of these storms as they get going. And then down in Phoenix, similar story, 60 to 70 miles an hour with those monsoon type storms, the high base storms. Likely going to see some dust storms out here with the outflow from some of these storms triggering those dust storms. Not sure why I had that slide in there. But then we go to our tornado risk. Just got this little tiny sliver of an area just to the east of Fargo. Things don't look like they become really have that tornadic potential until they get just to the east of Fargo, and then still just off to the east of Aberdeen, South Dakota. But there's just this small narrow corridor where conditions look potentially favorable for some tornadoes embedded within those storms. So we'll give here an overview of what we're expecting for these storms today. Really not doing anything until we get later on this afternoon. This is 2 p.m. here, and then going into 6 p.m. still things fairly low end. And then as we get into the evening hours, 9 p.m. here, you can see some storms firing off near the Black Hills of South Dakota, and then along that little frontal area in North Dakota and northern Minnesota. And then getting into the early morning hours around 3 a.m., things start to look a little bit more favorable for those strong winds and potentially severe hail in central and eastern South Dakota, and then moving into the Minneapolis area earlier tomorrow morning. But things will likely be a little bit lower end severe by that point. So here's what we got, a little bit more zoomed in here. If my clicker will work, hasn't been wanting to work today. But 7 p.m. might get some storms along the Minnesota-Canada border. Those will be the first possibility for your hail producers and wind producers for today. And then we get a few more storms firing off. Got what looks like a cold front, cold front dry line extending north to south in western South Dakota, and then almost a bit of a warm front, stationary front on the north side of this line here where storms are going to be firing off today. So if we get some storms firing off that northern boundary, those are going to be the ones that are more likely to produce that larger hail for today, kind of breaking up into the morning commute hours as it gets into central Minnesota and Minneapolis. And then for this afternoon in the Phoenix area, just see these bubbly pop-up diurnal heating storms that we see a lot of times this year. This is the typical monsoon pattern that we see out here. Storms fire off the higher elevation areas of the Four Corners region, kind of just swirl around this area and create these higher winds as they lose that updraft, and the updraft of the storm collapses, creating some dust storms and gusty wind potential out there. But those go away by the overnight hours and into tomorrow morning. And then we move on to Hurricane Erin, Category 5. It was at one point. It quickly weakened as it got into an area of higher shear, dropped down to a Category 3, briefly re-strengthened into a Category 4 as it moved into slightly more favorable conditions, but that didn't last long. Dropped down to a Category 3 and then 2 fairly quickly after that. Just barely scraped the coast of the Carolinas, some of those outer bands, making for some rain showers out there. Some fairly large waves impacted the barrier or the outer banks of North Carolina there. But now it is beginning to move away and will continue to move farther away as the days go on. We got 3 areas that we're looking at right now, one of those being Hurricane Erin. We got Invest 90L and 99L out there right now. These are our next potential tropical cyclones over the next 7 or so days. We got the Hurricane Erin. We'll review that, what the future of it looks like, dropping down to a Category 1 fairly quickly, and then making it all the way up to Iceland, where it could make for some rainy conditions up there earlier on next week, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. So this thing is going to get moving pretty quickly as it gets attached to the jet stream and moves farther off to the north and to the east there. Then we go on to our next area of interest here, Invest 90L, 60% chance for tropical cyclone formation within the next 7 days. Fairly low chance for the next 2 days. This is going to be a longer term thing, but after it gets going, right now it's not looking like there's a chance for a U.S. impact, but things can obviously change being this far out in advance. But right now it's looking like it's going to kind of follow a similar path to Erin, but we'll be sure to keep an eye on that as the days go on. And then this next area of interest, 40% chance in the next 2 days, 40% chance in the next 7 days. So it's looking like something will form in the next 3 to 4 days or so. We'll be watching that pretty closely, but right now it's just kind of an area of general thunderstorms out there in the ocean. So here's what we got for our warnings and watches and everything like that. Tropical storm warning still in effect for parts of the East Coast, flash flood warnings as well, and flash flood watches. And then that is kind of all from Erin, and it'll be pretty much dissipating at the end of today, and Erin moves farther away from the coast and lessening those impacts. So here's what we got for our future upper air patterns here. Got this nice hot ridge in effect for the western portion of the country. That should weaken as we get into next week, but for the time being it's fairly strong and going to stay in place for the next few days or so. Hurricane Erin moving off fairly quickly after it gets attached to the jet stream. We have this high pressure system out in the Atlantic. This is responsible for steering those tropical systems that form to the south, just off the coast of Africa there. The high pressure, the wind flows out in a clockwise direction. So the closer that this high pressure system gets to the continental U.S., the closer those tropical systems are going to get to impacting the tropical U.S. or the continental U.S. So these tropical systems right now, if they form, will likely get wrapped around before they're able to hit the U.S. there. But if this high pressure system shifts a little bit farther to the west and steers those storms a little bit farther south for a little bit longer, then there's a better chance for tropical impacts to the U.S. But we'll be watching that placement of the high pressure system fairly closely. Here's another look at the spaghetti plots for Hurricane Erin. These are just different model runs showing kind of what they're all thinking for the future path of the eye of the storm. Now, notice how these spaghetti plots are all close together. That means there's some agreements between different models on the path that this hurricane is going to take. So if you remember back to the future path of the hurricane, the cone of uncertainty that I showed, it was fairly narrow. That means there's high agreements that that Hurricane Erin will stick kind of within that cone. There's a little bit more uncertainty towards the end exactly when it'll take that more northward turn, but for the most part the future path is has a good amount of certainty with it. So this is that northward turn that I was talking about. There's a little bit more messiness in the spaghetti plots, some of them showing even at making a loop, just narrowly missing Iceland. going into the UK as a tropical system there, or it'll be post-tropical at that point. But we already crossed Erin off the list. We're 5 names down. The next system that forms will be Ferdinand, and that's looking like that should we should have Ferdinand within a week or so out in the Atlantic. So right now we're at 5 named storms. Average is 14, so we still have a good ways to go. Last year we had 18 total named storms, and so this year we're forecasting to be just a little bit below what we had last year, but still right around average. So we haven't quite hit the peak of hurricane season. We're still right on this upward trend here. It looks like the peak of hurricane season is around that second week of September, and right now we're only about just a little past halfway through August, but we're right on that upward ramp up into the peak of hurricane season. So we have about another month or so lasting in the peak of the hurricane season before things really start to die down, getting into October, November, that sort of time frame. So for tomorrow, we're expecting similar story to today, where storms will fire later on in the evening and overnight hours, and that'll be when the main threat, after the morning round of storms moves through from what lingered tonight, then things will die down. We'll get into more scattered showers and storms later on tomorrow evening in Colorado, Nebraska, Wyoming, South Dakota. These storms will kind of all merge together, make this little mesoscale convective system is what we call it, MCS. That'll move through Nebraska, Kansas, make for some rainy, gusty conditions out in those areas for the overnight hours. So for your temperatures though, above average temperatures going to be sticking around for most of the country through today and most of tomorrow. That colder air moving in from Canada starting on Saturday in the northern plains. Then it'll really start to make a push south on Sunday and into Monday. Temperatures for today expected to get up into the 90s for many areas in the central and southern plains, triple digits for many areas of the desert Southwest, 70s and 80s for parts of the northern portions of the country, the Northeast staying fairly cool with Hurricane Erin helping pull in some colder air from Canada. And then as we get into Friday, temperatures pretty much the same. Saturday is going to be fairly close to the same as well, just with some colder temperatures now just starting to push in from the far northern portions of Canada. And then on Sunday, that's when we really start to see that colder air push in. And Monday, looking at these high temperatures, we got mid 80s for Oklahoma City. A little bit of a cool down compared to what we've been having, but we'll really see that cold air take effect as we get into Tuesday. See, here's our 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. Most of the country is going to be seeing at or below average temperatures, with a few areas in Texas, the Pacific Northwest, and in Florida are being the only places that are really expected to see above average temperatures, but below average temperatures expected for most of the country from August 26th to August 30th. Above average precipitation is also expected to come with that. So that means less severe weather, but more widespread rain. So this is what we look for when it comes to that drought relief. So those colder, below average temperatures mixing in with above average precipitation typically means we have more widespread, less sporadic rainfall. So that is a good sign for drought relief in the western portions of the country and southern portions of the country as well. So that's what we got for today. If you're interested in learning more about us, go ahead and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. If you're interested in purchasing a plan, go ahead and scan that QR code up above me, or you can give us a call at 855-334-4245, email us at info@hailtrace.com, or check out our website at hailtrace.com. That's it for now. I'm meteorologist Joey Cragness. Thanks for watching.